It's your host, Kevin Oldham, and I am floored, excited, and just over the moon to have today's guest. When we think about marketing and communication, right? One of the things when we're marketing a franchise system is we want to make sure that we're saying the right words. We're using the right emotions to communicate with people. And a lot of times us marketers, we're doing our best. We're using data and things like that. But to be honest, sometimes we have to kind of make a hypothesis and guess to get close to the bullseye. And today's guest, Grant Gooding, the CEO and founder of Proof, has developed an organization and a framework that helps remove some of the guessing when it comes to connecting with your audience through communication. Grant, welcome.
Very well executed introduction that is not deserving. So thank you.
Wow. I could have just read what, all this stuff where you've done all these engagements and you're an international speaker, but I'm going to let you speak to that stuff. But let's go back. You started your business, or you started in the business world in the M&A space, right?
Yeah, M&A, there's really nothing sexier, I don't think.
It's ugly, isn't it?
I kind of fell in love with it accidentally. I wanted to be a lawyer for some reason. Worked in law and absolutely hated every minute of it. But I really sort of fell in love with the business side of what mergers and acquisitions is. I loved doing the analysis. I loved putting puzzle pieces together. And so once I decided I wasn't going to be a lawyer, I became an analyst. And I worked for a small firm that did mostly mid-market and small market acquisitions. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I was good at was integration planning. So once you get two organizations, you put them together, there's a lot of stuff you got to do. And it's really hard work. It's trying to figure out, we have two cultures. We have two customer service departments. How do we integrate these? How do we decide if everyone stays or some people go? How do we analyze the technologies that exist? All kinds of stuff. And it was really fun. Mm-hmm. The thing that I had the biggest challenge with was not anything that was happening internally, but it was the customer side of things. Why are customers doing business with either one of these two organizations that we're trying to put together? And it became evident after several years of doing that work that it may be one of the most important parts of the entire M&A process, because it's where the greatest risk lies in failure. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because we make a lot of assumptions around why people do business with us, why people buy our product, why they hire us to perform a service. And we have all these sort of like false confidences around customer measurement, around our CRM system. We can see their behavior. We see when they're in our funnel. And there are all these things that sort of make us believe that we understand our customer when we really don't know some of the most important things, which is, why the heck are they even here in the first place? No one asks that. We know once they get there, they do this and then they do that. And then they go here. And this is where their drop-off point is. And we try to make things more efficient. But we really have no idea why people are doing business with us in the first place. And we sat around as analysts and thought, boy, if we could just figure that out, our lives would be a lot easier. And I was very unimpressed with the options out there. Like market research hasn't exactly changed a whole lot.
Right.
The only thing that's changed is everybody has access to it, because there's Google Forms and there's SurveyMonkey and there's Qualtrics, and there are these platforms that now you can execute market research on your own, which is very dangerous, by the way. It's kind of like giving someone a sales call and being like, "You're fine."
Right.
Just like anything, there's an art and science to every job.
Yep.
So one of the things that I always wished I had is, if I could just understand why people do it. You ask the owners, they'll tell you. This owner will say, "Oh, this is why they do business with us. Our product is this, and we do that, and we take care of them." And interestingly, this customer says almost the exact same thing, right? These two business owners, "Oh, well, They have no idea.
Yeah.
They think they do, but they're completely biased. They built the machine.
Mm-hmm.
They'll tell you how the machine works, but what if the customer doesn't care about the machine?
Yep.
They probably don't. So we thought, boy, there's got to be a better way to figure this stuff out. So we kind of fell into this business backwards, trying to create a better widget to help us do that analysis. And it just kind of took off from there, I guess.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's almost like, I'm kind of getting this sense of being able to have like X-ray vision into your customer's mind, right? Like, it's really hard to be objective on your own stuff. And Ryan Holiday mentioned this in the obstacle is the way, or is it the obstacle is the enemy? I can't remember what it is. The obstacle is the way, Ryan Holiday's book. And he talks about it's really hard to be objective on your own stuff, but it's really easy for other people to be objective on your stuff. And what you guys, when it comes to like market research, what I see is you're paid hired guns to come in and be super objective and get data to back it up and tell a story to that business owner so that they can tell a better story to the people that they serve. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's very accurate. And it's not always good news. But the reality is I'm on your customer's side.
Mm-hmm.
I will vehemently defend their position, and I'm doing my best to understand how they feel, to understand the types of messages that are going to resonate so that you can communicate to them in a way that perks them up.
Yep.
Language and ideas are the things that drive our decision-making and our limbic system, our decision-making brain. And so I try to figure those things out and point organizations in the right direction and say, stop talking about this stuff. You're losing money every time you say it because no one cares.
Right.
A lot of times it's a tough conversation because it may be a foundational principle of the organization. And so a lot of times it's kind of like, okay, well, just because it's important to you doesn't necessarily mean it's important to the person that's paying you money.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say a lot of times, hey, take that thing, write it on the wall inside of your office and have it be something, because it's critically important to what you're building and how you're building it.
Right.
It's just no one cares.
Yeah.
So stop talking about it.
Yeah.
And talk about this instead. And if you do that, you're going to create a stronger emotional connection with your customer and you're going to make more money.
Right. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So you guys, like, I think that if nobody, if you've never done market research, I think there's this perception and everybody probably has their own perception, for the people that are listening, they're franchisors. So there's somebody that has taken a business concept, boxed it up, and they're marketing it to other entrepreneurs and saying, hey, do you want to come row in the same direction with me? Right. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, like, as a franchisor, as we mentioned earlier, you've got to talk, you actually have to think about two different customers. So like, so you've got two missions that you're doing. Number one, business to business, selling business opportunities. But number two, as a franchisor, you also have to think about B2C types of marketing for your franchisees. How have you ever tried to, peel an onion that has multiple facets to it like that? Like, hey, you've got two different audiences that you have to talk to. They're two totally different, almost silos of ways that you communicate, different channels, different everything, right? You guys ever work with companies or maybe even franchisors or somebody that has kind of a parent-child, relationship in business to try to figure out that dynamic? Because there's overlap too. It's kind of like I almost get pretzel brain thinking about market research for franchisors. So walk me through how that would work.
So those types of complex scenarios exist in lots of different types of businesses. So even down to something simplistic. So think about any random nonprofit.
Okay.
Most nonprofits have two customers.
True.
They have their donors, mm-hmm. who they have to talk about the value proposition of what their mission is and convince them that they should invest based on the output of what they do. And also volunteers, right? They need labor and they need those constituents out in the community to help them grow. Very rarely are those two audiences aligned in what's important to them. And so we have to analyze them independently. There are a lot of B2B2C types of organizations out there, things like manufacturing and logistics, where they have similar relationships to a franchisee. If you're a franchisor and you're trying to identify potential franchisees, the value propositions that you're using to convince them probably have absolutely nothing in common with what the franchisee would need to be saying to generate revenue within customers, right? You're selling an entrepreneurial experience versus a product or service.
Yeah, 100%.
So and the thing that you do is really like, so if you're selling, weight loss, or it's a gym or something like that, like that's just a coincidence that the franchisee is like, yeah, you know what? I actually have a little bit of a passion towards health and fitness anyway. So I'm naturally gravitating towards this. That's really the only, and many times the only significant variable that exists in that relationship. Yeah. Everything else is, here's how you're going to support your family.
Yeah.
So what are the elements of our business model as a franchisor that we can communicate to our franchisee that's going to get them to go, this is a good opportunity. This is something for me I want to hang my hat on and run with.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, here are all the value propositions and unique selling propositions and things that are going to allow you to be successful in the market, in whatever marketplace you're in. So it's not always a linear type of relationship that exists between how we have to message to a franchisee versus our end customer. They may be completely separate.
Right.
So it just really kind of depends on the situation. But if you don't know, right, like, so a huge mistake, for instance, would be use the types of value propositions that we use to sell our customer and really load that heavy onto a franchisee, because the franchisee may not care. The skill set that they have in running a business is really the most important thing. You want them to be successful and make money.
Yep.
So if you predicate your entire development strategy around identifying franchisees, around people that are passionate about health and fitness, you may be shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
Because what if those people in general are terrible business people?
Right.
You're fishing in a crappy pond.
Right.
So it may be completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
So understanding those two audiences, what makes a great owner for my style of franchise is something that is probably worth evaluating, and then figuring out, all right, how do I message those people in the most effective way so that I can get through the noise and I'm giving my opportunity a better chance to win this good person.
Right. Right. No, that's yeah, you're right. It's like it's as a franchisor, first of all, it's easy to get like groupthink because you're typically not just one person who's franchising. I mean, sometimes you are if you're just getting off the ground. But, I remember back, when I've been part of a team building a value proposition, and it's pretty easy to get like groupthink and think, you get a bunch of executives in a room. We're like, all right, here's what's going to matter to our franchisees or our prospective franchisees. Here's what's, got us to where we are right now, which is our relationship with our existing customers and our prototypes or whatever we've done. But as I think back to my career, I'm like, man, if we had more data, more insights, and you and I are from the same school of thought, which is more data reduces risks. It just the more information you have, the less risk you have on whatever it is that you're doing. So whether it's, hey, I'm going to expand internationally with my company, or, hey, I'm going to go the, franchising versus licensing route. Like anytime we have more data, we can reduce risk and make better decisions. And I keep getting back to like, you guys give us X-ray vision into our customers' minds. Like that's your new tagline, man. I know you try to go like super classy and use all these big words, but I'm like, X-ray vision into your customers' minds is really what you're doing. And then once we know what's in their minds, we can make really smart business decisions. And probably save money, time, and all those things throughout the process.
I did write that down. By
the
way,
you did?
Look, we are not anything special. We have the same issues that any business owner had, which is we're biased.
Yeah.
We have four walls in our office just like everybody else.
How do you keep your bias out? How do you keep your bias out of
we do studies on ourselves.
Yeah.
When we're working with a client, it's easy because we have perspective. Perspective is the one thing that everyone needs and no one has. It's the most important thing in life is perspective. And we just don't have it. So that's why it's always easy when your buddy's like, hey, I'm struggling with this in my business and I got that, but you're like, why don't you just do that? It's the easiest. It's like, you're like, duh, how do you not see that?
Right.
It's so easy to do that when you're looking from the outside in. And that person's going to have 10 reasons why they haven't done that. Right. They get in their own head. It's just the way it is. So we run ourselves through our own process all the time.
Do you?
I mean, all of our language and stuff that we use, we're not the most creative folks around, but we follow data.
Yeah.
So when we see something in our data sets that come back when we do studies on ourselves, we use it. Yeah. And it works. Why? Because it's math.
Yeah. It's math. Math's never wrong.
But we're absolutely going to test extra. We typically don't test like creative style messages, but I already made a note. We're going to test that. That's pretty good.
So you guys, you've got the quantifiable component, but then you have to interpret the data. Like, it's not like if we do a research project with you, you're not just going to dump a bunch of spreadsheets on my desk and be like, hey, dude, good luck. So part of collecting data is being able to, obviously extract insights, right? When somebody works with you to figure out, I'm just going to say the whole X-ray vision thing, they're trying to figure out what their customers, whether it B2B, B2C, are thinking and what messages are going to resonate with them. What is that? What does like the work product look like that you give to your customer? Is it, consultative and you guys are like, walking them through things? Is it kind of a document that they're able to share with their entire like marketing organization? Like, what's the work product that people get when they work with Proof?
So to your initial point about being able to walk through it, we in the first study we ever did on ourselves, we determined that everyone loves research. No one's like, get it away from me. I'm not into it. What they don't like is that a lot of times their experience with research is there's a big stack of papers that someone hands to me. And they don't like that. What they really want is, hey, look, man, just tell me how to convert all that crap into money.
Yep.
If you can tell me how to convert the numbers and all that stuff into cash, I'll listen. And so we completely had to sort of rethink, because research has been the same for 50 years. Right? The methodologies and everything else. So we sort of had to rethink, well, what would someone want? We have a full-time designer on staff. We're like the only weirdo research company that actually has a designer on staff. His only job is to make data interesting and beautiful.
Okay.
Because if it's interesting and beautiful, people will consume it.
For sure.
People don't like spreadsheets and data matrices as much as I do. So the way that we present is we start off and we say, well, the whole engagement is, what do you want to know? Because I can find lots of stuff, but if you don't want to know and you don't care, then I'm wasting everyone's time. So every business is a lot of times as a marketer, you're trying to determine, hey, what's your pain? You tell me what your pain is. I can figure out a way to help you.
Yep.
Okay. And we use the same method. It's scientific method. What do you want to know? And we perfect, given a perfect world, if you could know anything, what would you want to know? I want to know what my customers, how they talk about us behind our back, because what we think and what they say on Yelp are two totally different things.
Right.
Or we've always just wondered that. Awesome. I can tell you unequivocally how they are talking about you to their peers or their colleagues or their family members or whatever. So that's a starting point. So I'm going to show you that because you care about that.
Yep.
What else you want to know? Well, we're thinking about moving into a new geography, and we don't know anything about the competitors there. We don't know about the barriers. Like, are we going to go in there? It may look good based on some macroeconomic data we have, but there are a lot of surprises when you move into a new geography. Band may not be what it is in other areas. There may be existing alternatives that you don't totally understand, and that are going to create a really strong barrier. They're going to keep you from being successful. So, hey, we want to know, how successful could we possibly be if we moved into this? What are the barriers we should keep an eye on? What's the competitive matrix look like? I'm going to show you that because that's what you want to know. Yeah. So that's our starting point.
That's
so
awesome.
Then we do all the research. We come back and we say, this is what people think. This is what they're saying. This is what you should talk about. These are the things that are important to them. We'll show you all the matrixy data stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I know you don't care, but it's showing our work. And then we show you all the nerdy stuff, and then we say, here's what it means, and here's what you should do about it.
Awesome.
And that's literally what our work product is.
That's
very
awesome.
simple.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's like kind of like if you be careful what you wish for, because if you hire somebody to do market research in your company, first of all, you may not like the things that you hear, or you may be surprised. I'm guessing that that's probably a more normal thing than not normal, right? People are like, oh my gosh, our customers are saying that. But number two, like that data is worthless if it's, sitting, like you said, a stack of spreadsheets. Like, I don't know what to do with that. I don't need that as a CEO or the leader of the organization. I want to know, what should I do? Because you're the expert that I hired to guide me, right? And for a subset of people who really are nerdy and like to look at the data and the underlying assumptions, great. That work product's available. But for people like me, and I think most people that are super busy, I don't want to troll through all that stuff. I just want to know, what are your guys' insights into my customers' brains? And furthermore, what do me and my team do with that? Like, how do we act upon that? So that's super cool. Do you guys ever work with companies like, hey, and I know you've got kind of like this, we'll go do a research project. Do you ever work with your customers after they've integrated that research, to kind of see, hey, we did this initial project, we repositioned ourselves, and this is how we're communicating. And maybe like a year later, is this message resonating with our customers? Like, do you guys ever do follow-up research after the initial thing because I'm guessing it's kind of an iterative process. Like, it's something that your customers' needs and what's going on in their head are going to change over a period of time. Like, it's not this, people aren't static.
Yeah. So we do, most of the time it's around, if we discover that there's some, conceptual or functional discrepancy that exists in a company, right? Like so sometimes we'll find that there's some sentiment around blocking and tackling, shipping, right? The shipping is inaccurate, and that is hindering the organization's ability to grow share of wallet with a company or something like that. And so they'll put efforts in place to improve that, and then we'll go back in and test that perception, a year later, and just to make sure that it's improving.
Cool.
So yeah, we do that stuff. But to your point around human beings being static, so this is interesting. Most organizations behavioral measure to some extent, which they should. Okay. It's important to understand, because human beings have action and they have thoughts, and sometimes they're aligned and sometimes they're correlated. Sometimes they're causal.
Right.
So imagine a coffee shop, for instance. If you're that coffee shop, you are, and your CRM system, or your point of sale system rather, is measuring all kinds of stuff. At the end of the day, you know how many cups of coffee you sold, you know how many muffins, right? Whatever. Yeah. And that is very important data, because it allows you to even be predictive once you have enough of it, right? Hey, it's a Sunday on a football game. We need to close at 2.
Yep.
Because no one's going to be here anyway. We'll actually make more money if we're not open. So a tricky thing is, where's the metric in our point of sale system that told us why someone walked in the first place? And there may be all kinds of data, or there may be all kinds of reasons around that. And that's where our two kind of data sets get a little wonky. When I said earlier, like there's this sort of, you have these like false confidences that you have around understanding your customer.
Huge biases. I mean, we're hugely biased. You're right.
Well, you feel like you really know them. So you're like, I know how many times they come in.
Yep.
Well, why are they coming in? What if they have a crush on one of your baristas?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a real thing. What if it's on the way to work? Like, and that's one of the reasons that M&A failures happen a lot in integration, is we don't really understand those nuances. And those are the nuances that human beings buy.
Yeah.
And if you change a little thing, you're like, well, wait a minute, all we did was, get rid of this or change our hours a little bit. How come it had this dramatic effect on our business? And it's because you truly didn't understand why they're showing up. You just knew that they did.
Mm-hmm.
So it is kind of a false confidence. Now, human beings, your whole worldview, your belief system, most of the time is set by the age of 13, which means that many of the beliefs that we have, many of the which side of the political spectrum we fall on, it's not ours.
Yep.
It's our parents. And so we are a victim of the perceptions and the beliefs that were taught to us when our brains were super sponges.
Mm-hmm.
So while human beings are not static in their behavior, many times our emotions are static, in that you're not going to have an introvert that's going to be an extrovert next year. And we got to worry about that.
Right.
We don't. You're either at somebody that likes a face-to-face meeting or doesn't. Somebody that loves to shake somebody's hand is not going to be like, I don't want to shake somebody's hand anymore, unless something wildly traumatic happens.
Right. So
many times when we go into field, we do see that there are some. If we go back into field, we do see that there are some changes. But for the most part, we are the person that we are today, 10 years ago, and 10 years from now. We're going to be the same person, the way we feel about things.
Mm-hmm.
So I really wish that wasn't the case, because we could make an argument that we need to be going in field every month or every quarter.
Right.
We would
you could have a recurring business model, right?
We'd have a way more successful business. But the fact of the matter is, I'd be ripping people off, right? Because the data that would come back would be the same. We've got a client we've been measuring every year, and we just see there are slight differences, but there are slight differences for the most part. It's the same every time we go into field.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy. So if people want to learn more about you or Proof, like, what are the best ways that they can connect with you or learn more about your organization? Because I know that for me, having X-ray vision into people's minds, like that's freaking amazing, right? So, and I know how to get a hold of you, but a lot of people don't. So where do they find you?
I don't know. I have a pretty weird name. So if you just Google my name, or Grant and Proof, you'll find me. It's like me, an accountant in the United Kingdom, and like a high school swimmer.
Oh, really? So
there's not that many of us.
That's cool. Yeah. That's cool. Awesome. Yeah, man, I deeply appreciate you taking time out of your day to visit with us. I think that emerging franchisors have more at risk than probably anybody else when it comes to the franchising space, because McDonald's knows who their customers are. I mean, they're established. Chick-fil-A, like all these guys kind of know. But emerging, you're kind of still in that startup phase, and your value proposition may not be directly pegged to what it is that your customers want. So I think that this has been a phenomenal conversation, and just opening people's eyes to what resources are available, so that if they need to get closer to the bullseye in terms of their messaging, they don't have to guess anymore. So, Grant, thank you so much for joining us. Deeply appreciate your time today, man.
Kevin, it's good to see you. I appreciate it, bud.
Have a good one, man.